Want to watch football without the restrictions of blackouts or cable? Check out expressvpn.com to help you get access to all the live games. Sign up today using the link in the description to get 3 free months. Yoda brothers, it's the director. Chargers fans, we got an ambitious video for today. You know, I would say Chargers fans as well as general NFL fans, because your team will be represented in today's video. We are talking about potential shocking cuts for every team in 2022. And of course, being a Chargers fan and a Chargers channel, we're going to be looking for players that the Chargers in specific can pick up from these potential cuts. But you know what? I think it's important to get a gauge on the NFL, on every team's current cap situation and names that could be entering the fold, because there's a lot of players on here that, honestly, I don't think the Chargers would need, but another player, another team could certainly make use of. So, and we see this every single season, right? A big name hitting the market out of nowhere kind of throws everybody for a loop. Cam Newton being one of those names last season with the New England Patriots. He ends up going back to Carolina for one more stint there, right? Sometimes it's because the player is hurt, they've underperformed, or the team just simply cannot afford him. And that's the big one. When a team cannot afford a player, usually that means there's going to be some value in the player that is being let go. This could offer another team value in terms of signing them in free agency. Now, it's hard to predict what's going to happen, obviously. We can't see the future, but we're going to give it a shot, okay? A lot of these names on this list could be shocking, but there's a good number of them, too, that make a lot of sense for their respective teams, right? But I'll tell you guys right now, some of them are shocking, including the Chargers. I don't think you guys are going to be able to guess which player I selected for our team as well, because in the end, there's a lot of teams that must get under the cap, and there's teams and players that do not fit where they are right now. So shout out to PFF. We used an article that they posted as a guideline for this video, but I did put a lot of my own spin on it as well. Before we do get started, guys, question in the comments like we always do. Of the players I'm about to list, who would you want to pursue the most if they were a free agent and available to be signed? Let me know. I'll let you guys know my answer at the bottom of the video too. Before we do kick off, guys, hit us off with a like and sub if you do enjoy this Chargers content. The small amount of time you guys take to hit the like, sub, and bell notification helps me out a lot. I got my eyes on 50K, man. Help us get there. With that, lights, camera, action. Potential shocking cuts for every team in 2022. Might be looking for some future Chargers. Again, we got 32 names to go over on this video. We got to jump right into it. Starting with the Arizona Cardinals. Do they cut DeAndre Hopkins? I'm just kidding. If you turn it off now, I totally understand. We're actually going with Devin Kennard, edge for the Arizona Cardinals. Again, some teams were a little bit easier to find, like a big name, like, oh my God, what if they moved on from this guy? Other teams, their cap situation didn't allow for more dramatic cuts. Still, this guy's an average overall, decent edge player, especially versus the run. I would maybe compare him a little bit to maybe like a budget Uchenna Nwosu for the Arizona Cardinals, but he just does not get enough snaps to justify his salary. At 30 years old, I view him as a rotational edge at best. You know, I wouldn't say he's on the Chargers' radar, okay? And we're going to move on. This is how quick we're going to have to go with 32 players to go over. Next up, the Atlanta Falcons. The Atlanta Falcons and Grady Jarrett might be the connection there. Cap savings of $16.5 million. Oh, by the way, with Devin Kennard, cap savings of $4.8 million. Okay, here's Grady Jarrett. Cap savings of $16.5 million. Now, the Falcons, $13 million over the cap. These are going to be some of the decisions they got to make in order to get over the cap this season. And you know what? There's even rumors of them wanting to trade Grady Jarrett this last season. I do think that could still happen, and I do think it's because the Falcons are trying to address their cap issues. Now, Jarrett, to me, is still a great talent and would slate in as one of the best defensive tackles in free agency this season if he is released. Again, honestly, some of these names, dude, I hope to see Grady Jarrett out there and have the Chargers make a push at him, but these are kind of some of the big moves that teams are going to have to make to get under the cap, and the Falcons definitely not an exception there. Next up, the Baltimore Ravens. Alejandro Villanueva. Now, this guy was honestly on my radar. last season as a potential pickup because the Chargers just needed so much help on offensive line. We did a much better job at that, though, with Tom Telesco and Brandon Staley. The Baltimore Ravens, however, did suffer from losing Orlando Brown. It's very short and simple. Alejandro is pretty old. He graded extremely poor with Baltimore. He should be let go. I could have chosen a more dramatic name here, but this one just made the most sense to me. So Alejandro Villanueva, I would say, is a pretty likely cut candidate for that team out there in Baltimore. Next up, the Buffalo Bills. Now, it was between Corey Beasley and Mitch Morse, their center, and I decided to go with Corey in this instance here because there's no question that Beasley is a great wide receiver talent. I don't think there's any fan in Buffalo that would want to see this man leave their football team. However, I think, Buffalo, with being $6 million over the cap, I feel like Josh Allen, one of the best quarterbacks in the league right now, could work with lesser wide receiver talent. But what this team really does need is to help bolster that protection for Josh Allen, give him more time in the pocket. So if Corey Beasley becomes a casualty of that, then maybe so be it. Is this a guy that the Chargers should pursue? Fans in the comments, let me know. Next up, for the Carolina Panthers, this was probably one of the tougher teams for me to even go out there and find a name. Okay, this team doesn't have a lot of room to cut anybody. Those contracts are pretty airtight, and Daly, in my opinion, might be the odd man out. He struggled in pass protection. He's their guard, and oh my God, dudes, I'm so sorry. I continue to forget the numbers. Corey Beasley would be a savings of $6.1 million, and Alejandro Villanueva would be a savings of $6 million. Okay, moving back to Dennis Kelly, guard for the Carolina Panthers, $2.5 million could be saved by cutting this man. Again, it's tough. My dramatic decision as far as the player to select would have been Sam Darnold, but he carries a ton of dead cap. He needs to be traded, Sam Darnold. He's not going to work out for Carolina. They need to find themselves a quarterback. Dennis Kelly, to me, is going to be the odd man out there. Next up, the Chicago Bears. Eddie Goldman, defensive tackle. The Bears would save $8.8 million by cutting this man after June 1st. Now, just a quick clarification. Sometimes you save more money by waiting until after June 1st to make the cut, and you're going to see a flurry of those guys here on the list as well. So, Eddie Goldman, I think this is tough because the Bears do have some decent cap to work with this season, right? But I do feel like Eddie Goldman in particular may have fallen off the map as far as his production. After opting out of the 2020 season, it seems like he's lost a step. If anybody were to pick this guy up, if he becomes available, he might be looked at as more of a depth signing, somebody to add to that roster as far as the number 2 or 3 guy. Next up, the Cincinnati Bengals, who almost so close to a championship this last season, might be looking to part ways with Trey Waynes, a savings of $10.8 million. Now, to be honest, the Bengals are not hurting for cap space whatsoever. They're one of the top, I think, 5 teams in cap this year. And honestly, I think they're going to be big spenders in free agency yet again, so why let go of Trey Waynes? Well, Waynes has been hurt since 2020. So I think cutting him further, strengthens their cap, situation, gives them more spending to go out there and address maybe cornerback again. But yeah, watch out for the Cincinnati Bengals. They're going to be a big hitter in free agency this season. And Trey Waynes, unfortunately, a cap casualty due to his lack of health on the field. Next up, the Cleveland Browns, Jarvis Landry, the Juice. Bless him. Bless him, but not on the Cleveland Browns, right? Landry has been posting recently about moving on. So there's already established rumors that he may not be a Cleveland Brown in 2022. He posted career lows in 2021. I tend to think that might be Baker's fault, but maybe that's just me. And the Browns have a lot of work to do in rebuilding their wide receiver core. Okay, I don't know if Jarvis Landry is going to be part of that picture this upcoming season. Landry, in my opinion, the best move for him is to take a prove-it deal with the new team. Could it be the Los Angeles Chargers? Maybe, but I think the Chargers have different needs. He might find more success in another system, maybe like the Baltimore Ravens. So Jarvis Landry would save this team $15 million, and of course, I forgot Trey Waynes, who would be a savings of $10.8 million. We'll get this right by the next guy, okay? This next guy, a big name. He might even be on the cover of this video's thumbnail. We're going with the Dallas Cowboys and Amari Cooper, wide receiver. You know what's insane? Of course, I think a lot of people remember when the Dallas Cowboys extended this man to a ridiculous contract. If they were to cut him post June 1st in 2022, the Dallas Cowboys would save $20 million. course, Amari Cooper being one of the most highly paid wide receivers in the NFL. And you know what? There's already rumors about this. This is not me pulling it out of my butt in any way. We have already started hearing rumors that the Cowboys could let go of not just Amari Cooper, but D-Law as well. Lawrence. They are minus $22 against the cap right now, or $22 million against the cap. Cooper's numbers, I just don't feel like they justify his cap hit. I think this is CeeDee Lamb's team now, and I think the Dallas Cowboys would be better with, maybe taking that money and spending it elsewhere on that defense. Still, Amari Cooper, very talented wide receiver. If he hits the open market, I could definitely see him reeling in somewhere between $15, $17 million a season, but his numbers just do not justify him staying with the Dallas Cowboys. If you guys are watching this, would you take a risk on Amari Cooper if he becomes available? I'm kind of on the edge with that. There's no doubt that he's very talented, but I just have to assume that he would demand a very high cap hit expensive contract if he were signed by a new team. Next up, the Denver Broncos. Now, the Broncos, in my opinion, didn't really have any guys that make sense to cut with how they structure their contracts. Okay, there's a couple of teams like that on this list. So we're not going to see any really big names like, Bradley Chubb or anything like that. Instead, we got Mike Purcell. Okay, defensive tackle. The Broncos would save $2.7 million by cutting this man. Now, they're not really hurting at cap. They got like $38 million to spend. They're definitely one of the more powerful teams in free agency this season. To me, I just see Purcell as being older. He's not great on the D-line as far as what they're trying to accomplish, so this is more of just like Purcell could be out there, and if anybody signs him, it's likely a depth signing. Next up, another big name right here, Detroit Lions. We got Trey Flowers, edge. They would be saving $16 million by cutting this man after June 1st. Now, I love Trey Flowers. Okay, I think he's a very underrated player. I think a lot of people have forgotten really how productive he can be. He's a very powerful, well-rounded talent. He's just been hurt a lot, okay, especially over the last couple of seasons, okay? That a contract that big, they'd be saving $16 million. I think he's, under contract, I think something like $20 million this season. With a contract that big, you have to consider letting Trey Flowers go, okay? He's got to prove that he's capable to come back on the field healthy and play a full season. So for me, Trey Flowers, if he were to be let go, one that gives a lot of money back to the Detroit Lions to spend elsewhere. Do the Chargers or another team, consider signing him? I think so, right? As a player in this situation, what they'll more likely do is take a prove-it deal, right? Hey, let me play on your squad for, not the most expensive contract, but we'll go ahead and see if we can prove it and get another extension with a different team or even you guys going forward. So I like Trey Flowers. He does come with some risk. Of course, he's been injured the last couple of seasons back-to-back, but if he has a bounce-back season, he might be worth the risk of a lower-tier prove-it contract in the NFL. Next up, speaking of which, man, a couple edge players, similar background, similar stories. Darius Smith for the Green Bay Packers. This one would be shocking. I'm sure there's some, Green Bay Packers fans watching my video right now. We're going to turn this off because he's there. Darius Smith, definitely a big contributor to that team. But I do think this would be justified, right? The Packers are in deep trouble with their cap space right now. $42 million over the cap. That's pretty huge. And we don't know what's going to happen with Aaron Rodgers. Of course, that could shake things up. But still, the case may be is that Darius Smith, he suffered a back injury in week 1 of 2021, right? He did not return to the team until the postseason. Granted, he looked pretty good in the postseason, right? Still, this may be enough for the Green Bay Packers to move on from Zadarius Smith and save $15 million towards their cap. He'd be a risky signing. Of course, back injuries are not something to take lightly, but he did prove that he was ready to go in the postseason. That may be enough for a team to take a chance on him. He's one of those guys that I definitely wouldn't be upset if the Chargers pursued, but again, it would be risky. I would be, biting my nails a little bit because what if he does get hurt again? He's likely going to have a pretty big contract with a new team. Next up, the Houston Texans, the best ran football team in all of the NFL. Just kidding. It's Marcus Cannon. Marcus Cannon of the Houston Texans, right tackle, could be a savings of $5 million for the Houston Texans. Now, Cannon, to me, is an okay right tackle. Of course, I remember him better with the New England Patriots, where he definitely was a really good right tackle. But the issue with Marcus Cannon is that he suffered an injury early in 2021, and he did not play in 2020 due to opting out with the whole COVID thing, right? He's 34 years old. it might be time for him to move on and find a new team, but I'm also thinking he might be in retirement territory. Still, I think Marcus has got enough left in the tank. If a team wanted to bring him in on a short-term deal, he might be worth it. But for the Houston Texans, maybe it's time for them to move on if they get scared off from the early injury in 2021. I think that's enough to scare off a lot of teams, especially with a player of his age. So, Marcus Cannon. Next up, the Indianapolis Colts. For the love of all that's holy, sorry, Colts fans, we're going to have to roast you for just a second here, okay? This one is probably not shocking, even if you're a Colts fan, okay? The Colts' epic late season collapse, I think, was at the fault of Carson Wentz, and I think it also doomed Carson Wentz. This may be one of the most horrible trades in Indianapolis Colts history. I think they gave up, like a first rounder for this guy? Oh, man, that definitely does sting. And, a horrible trade for Indianapolis may end with adding $15 million to their dead cap. They would save $13 million by cutting Carson Wentz, but add $15 million in dead cap, okay? But I think this has to happen. The Colts, I think, outside of quarterback, are a very good team. They're kind of like, the Denver Broncos in that way. You add a really good quarterback, watch out for this team to make the postseason, maybe even the Super Bowl. Carson Wentz is not the answer. This team needs to stop skating around the idea of putting it all down on the line for a quarterback and go get a big, big name, okay? Somebody that'll help you contend. It's not Carson Wentz. This was a big mistake. You'll save $13 million, but you're going to end up with $15 million in dead cap because this is just a thing that needs to happen. Next up, the Jacksonville Jaguars. We got Malcolm Brown. He's a defensive end, okay? I'm sorry. The Jags aren't hurting in cap, right? And I don't think there's any big dramatic moves they need to make. I was thinking about, what's his name? Miles Jack at middle linebacker, but I think that they could definitely get a trade partner for him. I do not think that they cut him. So we're going to go with Malcolm Brown here, okay? And I think Brown is okay. He's not a terrible player. He's just not a good fit for this team, right? I think he's a decent run defender, I think back in 2020. But I think he's just been phased out by the Jacksonville Jaguars, who do feature other players. So if he's let go, the Jacksonville Jaguars save $3 million, and another team can maybe sign this guy for depth. Again, if he can get back to his playing days of maybe in 2020, he might be an okay guy to add as far as depth and run defense. Next up, the Kansas City Chiefs. What does the director have in mind for our rivals in the AFC West? Well, I was going to go with Frank Clark. I was going to go with Frank Clark because I think that's, very obvious. And again, I thought it was just too easy. Frank Clark has been very, very bad. And I think more than likely they're going to cut him. Anthony Hitchens has already been cut by this team. They're already making moves to free up some cap space out there, right? Instead, I'm going to go with Mecole Hardman, wide receiver. They would save $4 million by cutting Mecole. And this could be a shock for Kansas City and their fans. Now, Hardman, in my opinion, was drafted to be Tyreek Hill 2.0, right? And he's been okay. I do not think he has lived up to his expectation at all, but he has been all right in what the Chiefs are kind of asking him to do behind Tyreek Hill. But in my opinion, just as being, a Chargers fan and watching this team for so many years, I think the Chiefs want a different look at wide receiver. They signed Josh Gordon pretty late, probably looking for more of a route runner, somebody that can get open. Maybe they are still looking for that speed, but getting some variety in that wide receiver room might help that team out a little bit. Let's not give them too much advice, director. We don't want to see, Patrick Mahomes back out there with the premier wide receiver, but I think it wouldn't be a terrible idea for them to move on from Mecole and try and find a more reliable number 2 receiver behind Tyreek Hill. Next up, the Las Vegas Raiders. Corey Littleton, inside linebacker. They would save $12 million by cutting this man after June 1st. And I'll be honest, I wanted a bigger name. What if they went out there and cut Yannick Ngakoue? That's just never going to happen, okay? And Littleton just makes too much sense for them to move on from. Now, he had a great 2019 season, right? But since then, he's really fallen off. And the Raiders, I think they kind of made it apparent what they want to do when they went and pursued Denzel Perryman, okay? Denzel is kind of the guy out there now. I think they likely stick with Denzel, who made the Pro Bowl. Extra stinging emotions for the director and all of the Bull fam, but that's just what it is. And I think Corey is being well overpaid to play for the Vegas Raiders, so I think they let him go, save $12 million towards their cap. Next up, the Los Angeles Chargers. Drum roll, please. Chargers fans, I don't know if people are going to get upset at me for this one. We all know what we think it's going to be. It's not that. I think the Chargers, in terms of shocking cuts this season, could part ways with Michael Davis. Vato! While saving $7 million post-June 1st. I get it, Chargers fans. We don't want to see Michael Davis leave this team, but, you know, this is being shocking, okay? These are shocking names, and this is one that I think might shock Chargers fans, but in the end might make some sense, because I think we all know Bulaga is our most likely. I could have easily put Brian Bulaga on here and felt good about it, but in terms of shocking, Davis... He saw a career low grade in 2021. Let's not skate around it, okay? If the Bolts want a turnover, not just, let's say, on the defensive line, but they also want to turn over that cornerback room a little bit outside of Asante Samuel, they could add $7 million back in their pocket in pursuit of another cornerback, while only accumulating $2 million in dead cap by moving on from Michael Davis. I love Michael Davis. He's got the size, he's got the speed, but he really struggled in coverage in 2021, and this is per PFF grades and my own eyeballs, okay? So Michael Davis is going to be my selection for the Chargers. I don't feel good about it either, okay? Everybody get off my back. I love Otto, but if the Chargers want to improve, it's going to be, you know, moves like this that hurt that might have to make it possible. Next up, the LA Rams. Robert Woods. This one kind of shocked me too. I was taking a look at the roster. They would save $10 million by cutting this man post-June 1st. And it's kind of shocking because if you look at the Los Angeles Rams before the start of the season, there's no way you would think Robert Woods would ever get cut by this squad. But after, you know, some of their moves mid-season, you could argue that Odell Beckham Jr. might be a better fit for the Rams than Robert Woods. I think Odell has bigger, you know, playability, and I think that he would, in the long run, make more sense for the Rams than Woods would. If they feel the same, if they feel that OBJ would be better, they may elect to move on from Woods to make room for some of these contracts. And we know the situation the Rams are in right now, man. They want Aaron Donald back, and Aaron says he wants everybody else back if he's coming back and not going to retire. So sticky situation for the Rams. They don't have the best cap situation in the world either, but Robert Woods would definitely be a shock. Next up, the Miami Dolphins, Devontae Parker, another wide receiver. Now, Parker, to me, is a good player, okay? Miami fans, before you get up on me, I understand what I'm doing here. This is a shocking move for even you guys, okay? I think he's a good player, but he's often injured, right? I think the Chargers fans kind of have a similar, relationship with Mike Williams. I think he's also a very, very good player, but he does deal with injury quite a bit. I think, honestly, Devontae Parker may be a little bit more than Mike Williams. Now, with Waddle now on the roster, I think the Miami Dolphins could consider moving on. This is Waddle's team now, right? They got that good connection, the new number one out there with Tua Tagovailoa. Now, Miami doesn't have to really cut anybody, okay? They have the most cap in the NFL. This would be a shock, and this would be more of like, we don't want to risk a roster spot or cap space towards a guy that may or may not play. I think it has everything to do with injury and less to do with the player's talent. They want people that will be available. They would save $6 million with this move. By the way, Robert Woods, $10 million would be the savings there if I failed to mention. Next up, the Minnesota Vikings. Probably a selection that would get me shanked in Minnesota, but we're going to go ahead and say it anyway. We're going to say Harrison Smith. I get it, dudes. Vikings fans cannot be happy with me by picking Harrison Smith. He's a beloved Vikings player. I have a great respect for Hitman Harry. I think he's one of the best players at his position ever. But also, another fact, he is older. 33 years old, and the Vikings are up against the cap, okay? I also considered maybe Danielle Hunter, but I think you guys need him more than Hitman Harry at this point. Hunter would clear like $20 million. Hitman Harry would save them $11.5 million by cutting him post-June 1st. I get it, man. It's tough. It's supposed to be shocking. It would be really crazy to see, Harrison Smith on another squad, but it's just one of those guys that maybe doesn't make the cut. You never know. You never know. He's still a great player in my opinion, but man, dude, that would be nuts. Sorry, Vikings fans. Don't come after me. Next up, we got Devin McCourty. The New England Patriots would save $4 million by cutting this man post-June 1st. And again, we got back-to-back superstar safeties, right? My bad, New England. Short and simple for me, McCourty is old, right? 35 years old. Definitely still got some juice. but he's definitely on the twilight years of his career. And I think the Patriots could use more cap and a younger player at the position. I'll keep that one very simple. Get somebody younger to play safety instead of Devin McCourty. Save some money. We know the New England Patriots not afraid to go out there and spend in free agency. They're going to need some ammunition. So there's your New England Patriot, Devin McCourty. Next up, the New Orleans Saints. You guys ready for a shakeup at position? Here we go. The New Orleans Saints. Malcolm Jenkins. I promise I'm not doing this on purpose, okay? We got another older superstar safety in Malcolm Jenkins. Cutting him after June 1st would save the Saints $8 million. Okay, in reality, I think the actual player that they do cut is Bradley Roby, right? $10 million is what they would free up by cutting Roby. But Jenkins, to me, would be a shock. He also, again, very much so older. He carries, a high cap hit with him. The Saints are going to have to make some big decisions here in the next couple of weeks, man. If you're a Saints fan, hang on tight, dude, because you guys are $70+ million over the cap. It is not going to be, and you guys don't have a quarterback. You guys don't have a head coach. This team is so hard to figure out because I love their defense. They have such a strong, amazing defense, but their offense, without these key components, without a head coach, without any money whatsoever, are going to have to make some big decisions. So I placed Malcolm Jenkins as one of those shocking cuts for the team this season. Next up, the New York Giants. We got Blake Martinez, linebacker. The Giants would save $8.5 million by cutting this man. You know what? I like Blake Martinez a lot, right? This team, in my opinion, does have some tricky contracts on their roster, and to me, Blake Martinez just kind of makes the most sense. Okay, he tore his ACL in 2021. He's a good player, but the Giants, they got to fix their cap, and who knows if Blake Martinez will be back at full strength in 2022. They are $12 million against the cap, and again, he would save $8.5 million by being cut by the New York Giants. Now, the other New York team, the New York Jets, we got Sheldon Rankins, defensive tackle. The Jets would save $5.5 million by cutting Sheldon Rankins. You know what? Honestly, I've watched Sheldon Rankins for a while. I think I've always thought he's a very good player, and the Jets are really not hurting for cap, so why cut him? I just think that the Jets could use some upgrades, okay? Like I said, Rankins was once a pretty good run defender, but since then he has fallen off, right? So the Jets could save $5.5 million. I think if he were going to be signed by a new team, he'd be more of a depth guy. Maybe he comes back to some of his, better days and playing and brings in more production for his new team. Next up, the Philadelphia Eagles. The Eagles may have been the most difficult team for me to, I would say, predict in this video because their contracts, man, are airtight. Not a lot of room in terms of cutting people, so I'm just spitballing here. Gardner Minshew. I don't know. If Minshew was on my team, no way I would want him to leave. I'm pretty sure Philadelphia Eagles fans think the same thing. I think Minshew is one of the best backup quarterbacks in the league right now. I think, honestly, he could start for a lot of other teams. But here he is, a cut candidate. They could save $2.5 million. Rankins, by the way, is $5.5 million if I failed to mention. Minshew, maybe Hurts wants job security. He doesn't like having a pretty good backup quarterback behind him. Again, Philadelphia, I think those guys are set. I don't think we're going to see too many shocking cuts from Philadelphia this season. Next up, the Pittsburgh Steelers. I got Zach Banner. This one was a bit of a shock to me, too, because he's their starting right tackle this season. And honestly, he's a pretty decent one, too. I would say he's decent in terms of pass protection, though, right? He's a good pass protector. The run, however, he is not so good. He is not so good in run blocking. And with Big Ben gone, perhaps the Steelers want to bolster their run blocking for Najee Harris to really feature him as the, heart and soul and engine of this offense until they can figure out their quarterback situation. Cutting Zach Banner would save him $5 million and maybe give him some more money in pocket to go pursue a right tackle that is probably better in run blocking than Zach Banner. Again, Zach Banner did not grade very well in run blocking, but pretty decent in pass blocking. Next up, San Francisco 49ers. As we get close to the finish line here, we got Dee Ford, edge, right? Dee Ford, is he still in the league? Yes, he is still in the league. And Dee Ford, is a great player in my opinion, right? When he was on the field, making impacts, very fast, very good edge defender out there. The Niners would save $2.5 million, only $2.5 million by cutting him. Right? The biggest issue with Dee Ford is the injuries, right? A neck injury knocked him out of the NFL the last 2 seasons in a row. Very unfortunate. He's just one of those guys that you wish you would see out there every single week. He's just probably not going to be available right now or for a while, and this move adds the most dead cap out of all the other names on this list. But this might be best for the team, right? This might be best for the San Francisco 49ers. Move on. He's just too big of an injury risk, and you guys need the money going forward. Only $2.5 million, but again, it's just one of those moves that's just like, I don't know if we can afford to keep him on the roster if he's not going to be on the field. If he does go to a new team, he would likely need to sign a prove-it deal to prove that he's healthy, and even then, I don't have a lot of confidence that he can stay on the field very long. I honestly wouldn't be shocked if he decided to hang up the cleats. That's how serious of a neck injury he suffered a couple of seasons ago. Next up, the Seattle Seahawks. Big superstar name from the Seattle Seahawks that could be cut this season by the name of Bobby Wagner. How nuts would this be? Bobby Wagner finally leaving the Seattle Seahawks. I thought he was going to ride and die with the Seattle Seahawks until the end of his career, but he's one of the biggest names on this list for a reason, right? I think it comes down to money, I think first and foremost. But he has also alluded to his departure from Seattle not too long ago. He says he might not be part of the plans for Seattle going forward. But getting back to the money, right? As good as Bobby Wagner is, we can never, ever over or underestimate how big of an impact he's been for the Legion of Boom. One of the best Seahawks of all time. The only issue is that he's got a $20 million cap hit. Right, and I don't think he is still producing numbers and productivity that warrants a $20 million cap hit at the linebacker position. Linebacker is quickly becoming the new running back of the defense as far as contracts are concerned. Like, linebackers just do not get paid that much. And Bobby Wagner, for a long time, he was definitely the exception. But right now, you know, his stats have started to come down. It might be time for Seattle and Bobby Wagner to separate at this point. He'd be a huge veteran pickup this offseason for any team. The Seattle Seahawks would save $16.5 million by cutting Bobby Wagner, and this would allow Wagner to go out and maybe provide some value for another team at a more reasonable cost. I'm sure that, you know, he's going to still be expensive, but man, dude, Bobby Wagner, I honestly, even though he's older and he's not the Bobby Wagner of old, it would be tough not to get excited about Bobby Wagner, you know, being added to your squad. I'm certain Chargers fans would be excited about that too, but I digress. We'll come back to it in just a second here at the bottom of the video, but Bobby Wagner, probably the biggest name on this video by far. Next up, Tampa Bay Buccaneers. We'll keep this one short and simple. Cameron Brate, tight end. They would save $6 million by cutting this man. To me, the Bucs roster is tricky, okay? And that makes this selection not as shocking. I think Brate could be the cut. He was extended when he wasn't really needed, right? They were getting Gronk in the picture. They got O.J. Howard out there too. I think he's been great in the past, but not so much recently, and I do think the Buccaneers could, you know, start accumulating money to bring in a new quarterback into that team. So Cameron Brate will be my selection there. Next up, Roger Saffold, offensive guard for the Tennessee Titans. They could save $10 million by cutting this dude, and this would, to me, be the definition of cap casualty, right? I still think Saffold is a great player, but Tennessee needs the cap, right? I think they're over the cap right now. And Saffold, to me, is a premier run blocker, but struggles in pass protection. Is there a team that we just talked about that he would fit very well with? Maybe the Pittsburgh Steelers that want a more lethal running tech. Because when it comes to run blocking, it's hard to top Roger Saffold, man. One of the better in the league. But in terms of pass protection, he's definitely struggled. So I think this would be a cap casualty for the Tennessee Titans, saving $10 million back in their pocket. And last but not least, the Washington Commanders. Is this the first time I've ever said that in my video? Washington Commanders. Who did they decide to part ways with this season? Well, I'm going to go with this man, Landon Collins. I wanted to get, you know, a very big name that wasn't as obvious, but I think Landon Collins, it just makes too much sense, right? He was signed to a huge contract in 2019. What was it, like $84 million? Something ludicrous. And since that signing, he's been sharply declining. Okay, I think in terms of just, you know, being upfront with the Commanders fans and all that, I think this is just a move that makes sense, man. It was a mistake. I'm sorry, it was a mistake, right? Commanders got bigger needs than an overpriced safety, and I think moving on from Collins can begin the healing process. They are going to acquire a lot of dead cap by cutting him, but they also do save $12 million. I just think it's a move that makes sense, okay? So bottom line, longer video today, but hey, cut me a break, man. We had 32 teams to go over. The bottom line for me, I will admit there are some names on this list that are a stretch, some that are not. And there are certainly some names on this list that will upset their respective fans. Hitman Harry. I'm sorry, Vikings. Okay, I'm sorry. I understand. It's shocking. It's bold. It's all the above. But these are things that we see every single year, okay? As upset as some people may get, we see big names hit the market every single year. And this is me spitballing who I think from every team could be added to that list, right? Of the names I listed in this video that I would be interested in pursuing as a Chargers fan, I think the Chargers should definitely take a look at Grady Jarrett if he's available. Mecole Hardman adding that speed for Justin Herbert. I mean, he wouldn't be the most crazy wide receiver, but he would open up the deep ball a little bit. And then, of course, Bobby Wagner. If Bobby Wagner hits the open market, every team's going to want him. He'll probably still get overpaid, but if there's a world that exists where he takes a reasonable contract, he wants to play for a contender, maybe he lands with a team like the Chargers, which makes me absolutely ecstatic. So Jarrett, again, an obvious name due to our needs at defensive tackle. Solid talent. Hardman provide the speed. Wagner, ultimate vet signing in terms of leadership and playability. So that's my opinion. What are your guys' thoughts in the comment section below? Chargers fans, any fans really. This video was more designed to be broader, outside of just the Chargers fans, which again, it should be interesting, man. Should be an interesting offseason. A lot of teams, especially like the Chargers with a lot of money to spend, we're keeping a very close eye on stories like this. I mean, again, the rumor with Bobby Wagner, that wasn't started by me. That was started by Bobby Wagner. And the reason we keep a close eye on this is because we got a lot of cap space. The reason that you keep an eye on the offseason if you're a Saints fan is, who's staying, who's going. There's a lot of things that are going to happen in 2022, man. So let me know your thoughts in the comment section below. Let me know if there's one particular name in this video that you would be ecstatic to sign if you're a Chargers fan or let's say any other fan in the NFL. And that should do it, man. So guys, thank you so much for joining me. This has been The Director. Hit us up with a like and sub on your way out if you did enjoy this content. We'll see you next time. And as always, bolt up and stay frosty. B-Wags to the bolts. I like it.